shoot, one time in the 90s, we went up north, and I call it my up north, but I think it was my dad pulled in the driveway, and a guy came walking out of the woods at the driveway. He's like, who are you and why are you here? My dad's like, our property. And the guy was selling hunts as a hunt club on our property at one point.
Oh, wow.
Just because it wasn't used that much. There just wasn't much activity up there, and they did it. We had I think it was like a single wide trailer on there that was from like the 50s, aluminum siding deal, and they were just had a hunt camp in there.
Welcome to the Habitat Podcast, the podcast for wildlife habitat management, hunting strategy, and land stewardship. And now, your host, Jared Van Hees.
Welcome to the Habitat Podcast.
I'm your host, Jared Van Hees, and we're here for another episode of the Habitat Podcast. Guys, welcome back. We are in December. Muzzleloader season officially starts the 5th. Today, when you're listening to this. So thanks for tuning back in. We have a great guest today, Mr. Nick Pullano. He's out of northern central Michigan, new landowner, 75 acres, getting it done, doing the work. But he's new. We're getting his perspective on what he's done, what he's going to do, all habitat-related content here today. And he harvested a great buck to cap it all off. So Nick Pullano in Michigan, thank you all for tuning in today. Guys, we are looking for more guests at the Habitat Podcast. I have a few lined up, some really good ones coming. If you have anybody you want to hear from, hit us up on Instagram, on Facebook, send us a message. Tag me at Habitat Podcast. We'll get it figured out. Want to keep putting out content that you guys want to hear. Speaking of things that you guys are doing and very helpful with, leaving 5-star reviews on Apple iTunes, on the podcast app, that purple app on your iPhone. I'm sending out free decals to these guys and gals who are leaving us reviews. Here's one from V-Rod. This is one of my go-to podcasts with consistent quality and information. I appreciate I can listen without fear of bad language. Thank you. We try, V-Rod. Really appreciate the 5-star review. If you hear this, again, guys, shoot me a note, info@habitatpodcast.com, or hit me up on Instagram, and we'll get you a decal sent out for free. 5-inch Habitat Podcast decal. This one's from Pilot Ninja YT. This is such a great podcast that gives all types of knowledge from soil health, planting strategies, habitat management, to access with throwing in the consideration that there is not one cookie cutter answer that will work for all properties. Thank you, Pilot Ninja YT. Love to hear, your address. You send me your address, I'll get you a free decal. Thanks so much. Another one from Redbeard in Everett, Michigan. I've been to Everett many times. My favorite podcast, the HP crew delivers an informative, fun, and welcoming experience. Thanks, Redbeard. Hit me up, buddy. Guys, I really appreciate these. These kind of put fuel in the tank for us, keep us going. And if it costs me a price of a decal and a postage stamp, it's worth it. Really appreciate it. Before we get into this podcast, I want to tell you about Everland Outdoors, this beautiful map up behind me on the wall. They were formerly called Aerial Wildlife Solutions. That's what they go by or went by. Now they're Everland Outdoors, so make sure you're checking them out on Instagram. Lee's been on the podcast with me here before. Andy and I both have great maps from the guys over there, Lee and Adam, and they're doing some big things. So check them out. Now would be a great time to get a map. As you can see on the one behind me, I did it after I logged, and it's all woods, and you can see a perfect square of my property, how it looks different than all the wooded ground around it due to the logging. And this map is really cool. I had it at the Habitat Day, and I was giving away more decals for anybody who could find the bedded deer on the map. That's how high res these things are. There are bedded deer on this map. I'm looking at them right now. So it's pretty neat. I'm going to get one for the Northern 70 here soon, and just check them out, guys. Great gift, great Christmas gift, great gift to yourself for to show all the hard work you've been doing. I also want to thank Vitalized Seed. Gift cards are available at Vitalized Seed. If you guys are interested in any of that, you can order those. There's still some seed in stock, not very much, but gift cards are a great idea right now to keep those moving. Morse Nursery, their trees are available. In terms of ordering for the spring order, I would definitely focus on that because you want to get your order in while They have inventory. Get the inventory under your name. Check them out at morrisnursery.com. Packer Max Cultipackers, Lincoln, very first partner of the Habitat podcast. I think I'm going to be upgrading to the 6-foot model this spring. I've ran the 4-foot. I ran the 4-foot heavy duty. I ran the crimper attachment. I think I'm going 6-foot this spring for more coverage. I'm doing more plots now, and time is very valuable. So I'm going to grab the 6-foot model. They're all at packermax.com. Check them out. Another great holiday gift. Why not? Latitude Outdoors. Can't forget about my guys at Latitude. Check out their Grit series on YouTube, but I want to let you know that I hunted every hunt out of a tree this year, except for one in Illinois. I was in my saddle. Every single hunt, all year long. West Virginia, Iowa, Michigan, Illinois. It was awesome. Once you get the system built and you get comfortable with it, the Carbon Speed 6, the Method 3 saddle, I got the Rebel platform. I got the Ranger 22 pack. I'm good to go. I can go anywhere. I can go wherever I want, up any tree I want. And having that freedom and mobility, I think, has delivered one of the best seasons I've had in quite a while. So, including my beautiful Iowa 10 point, which was a great saddle setup there in Iowa. So check them out, latitudeoutdoors.com. Great products, awesome guys made right here in Michigan. Face Off e-bikes, another one. I can't say enough about these e-bikes, guys. I honestly am still blown away by how much I use this and how advantageous it is. The Northern 70, I was able to hunt a spot across the property that I've never been able to hunt because I don't want to walk across food plots. I don't want to leave boot scent behind. I don't want to look like a two-legged predator walking through the woods. Get up early, get on the bike, rip down the hill, rip to my spot, dump the bike, kill the doe, was able to rip back up the hill, not breaking a sweat. All my buddies are hiking. I'm ripping by. These are top quality e-bikes. I brought it to Illinois, I brought it to Iowa, brought it to West Virginia. And everybody who sees it and rides it is like, damn, that thing is much better than the one I ride or much better than the one I've seen. They're just high quality and they're bulletproof. Check them out. Dieter, love to work with you. He'll get you hooked up. Tell him Habitat Podcast sent you. Downburst Cedars. I'm already planting all my switchgrass. I'm going to be planting again this spring. The switchgrass I planted with the Northern 70 got about 3 foot this year. Looks perfect. I'm going to spend a lot more money on seed, unfortunately, and I'm going to put in these perfect 4 foot wide switchgrass strips, maybe double them to 8 foot. I have a lot of access and sight blockage I want to do where deer could potentially see me, and I want to ring these plots with a switchgrass. Downburst is the most effective and accurate way to plant that, let alone plant my nitro boost and my carbon lows. Downburst cedars, Doug they're flying off the shelves. He's keeping up with production and getting these things out. Beautiful pieces of art made in northern Michigan. Very accurate planting with a downburst cedar. Antler Anchor Company, guys. I love hanging my shed antlers and my Euro mounts on the wall with Antler Anchor Company. They just came out with some black versions of their stainless steel mounts. They're perfect. Get them on order. Not a very expensive item, so it's cool to check them out and throw a couple on your wall at camp. Last but not least, we have First Light Hunting. First Light just wrapped up their Black Friday sale, but all my gear I hunt with is First Light. I know the guys over there. You know, they make good stuff. It's comfy. It looks sweet. I wear it to work. I wear it around calling on customers. I do it all. So check them out at First Light Hunting on Instagram. Guys, we'll be back next week with another great episode of the Habitat Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck here in muzzleloader season or late season, depending on wherever you're at. I'll be out there with my son trying to get it done. Talk at you soon. All right, guys, we're back. We have my trusty, not rusty co-host, Mr. Andy Hutchens. How you doing, Andy?
I'm good. How you guys doing today?
Good. We got our good buddy Nick Pullano on today. Nick, how are you?
Good, guys. How are you doing?
We're doing great. It's December. Late season is officially here, and I don't know about you guys. I'm still hunting, but I'm I've been watching a lot of habitat videos on YouTube the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's kind of creeping up on us, right? It'll be here before you know it.
Exactly. Nick, why don't you start this out like we normally do? Let's paint a picture of who you are, where you're
Sure.
from, what you
Yep.
do, how long you've been in the hunting game, and all that stuff.
Sure. Yep. So I'm a Michigan guy too, just like you guys are. And I'm over in the thumb region of the state. So any of you non-Michiganders, we use our hand as a map. So I'm over here in the thumb region. Um, it's pretty much ag out this direction. I live on a small piece of property over here that I hunt a little bit, but primarily I hunt in the like southern half of the southern half of the northern Michigan, right? So it's like central Michigan, but a little bit north of that. I've got a little bit of family property there that I've taken ownership of over the past decade or so. I've been hunting here my whole life. You know, when I started, I think you had to be 12 to bow hunt, 14 to gun hunt. So I started right around those times as well. Not really from a huge hunting family, but it was just something for some reason it interested me. And same thing with a good buddy of mine, and we kind of learned by all the mistakes over the years. I don't think we were quote unquote successful for a very, very long time, man. It was like bikes and does is how we grew up hunting, you know. And we went through the baiting season, the baiting periods, the non-baiting periods, the baiting periods again, and non-baiting periods again. So we've been through it all here in Michigan, but never really been an out-of-state guy. So I've only really hunted this area. But I think it was probably 4 or 5 years ago I took possession of our family property up north, and since then I've been working pretty hard to try to change the hunting that I do up there and what I see. Growing up, man, we would see like one or two does in a 4 or 5 day hunt, right? We'd sit in a pop-up blind with some beets or some corn out there, and you're lucky to see a deer. You just freeze all the time. And we've been working hard to change that. And honestly, I'm in a good neighborhood in the area, and there's a handful of landowners. I think I'm in a group chat with like 20 or 30 guys that have properties in the area. For the most part, we're all on the same page. Everybody's got their own individual goals, but in the last like 5 years, it's just changed so dramatically up there to where it's a lot of fun to hunt now.
That's crazy. That's awesome that you've got that many guys on board, because
Yeah.
I do not have that around me by any means.
And I can't take credit for it. I'm just a recipient of it. It was actually the whole reason I got roped into the group of guys was probably because my name appeared on Onyx finally after a property transfer. But I think it was 2021. I had this giant buck, and I say giant. We're in Michigan, right? So some people don't consider them giants. I had a big buck show up, and I think it was like a mainframe 14 point with all kinds of trash. And he showed up all summer long, and I was seeing him. I saw him once during the fall that year, and then the next year I posted a picture of him, and he disappeared. And one guy reached out to me who I wasn't friends with on Facebook, but he said, "Hey, I see your background picture on Facebook. That buck's still alive." And I'm like, "What?" And I was at a wedding. I remember I'm like, "What? I got to call this guy." And I talked to him, and he roped me in. He's like, "Look, I got this group of guys. We can all talk about this deer. We're all hunting them." And turns out this group's huge in this area of all these landowners. And for the most part, same goals. Everyone's got their own little tweaks and versions of it, but it's been pretty cool. Definitely been cool. And I'm lucky for that, right? I didn't buy this property. It's family property that I acquired. You know, I was next in line, and it's my turn to care for the property. Like I walked into this, which is a lot luckier than a lot of guys can say. So I can't take credit for starting the group, improving the herd, but I do have a stake in it now. So it's kind of fun to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that like a formal cooperative? Do you know?
No.
I know we have a lot of co-ops in Michigan. Okay. So it's just
No,
informal kind of,
yeah.
kind of the same idea, right?
Yeah, the text message thread is called a co-op, but we're not anything formal in any way. Yeah.
Nice. Well, it sounds like your history is very similar to mine and probably Andy's. You know, all the things you were mentioning there. I've grown up doing,
Sure.
experiencing spikes, bait, the whole thing. So who owned the property before you? Like, tell me about the family lineage there and the history.
Yeah, so we've got a plaque out front, and I think it says 1912, and that's basically the property establishment. But we got deeper into the tax records, and I think we found it into like the 1850s, if I'm not wrong. Different family owning or family members owning the property, and basically, from what we can tell, we at one point, I'm pretty sure we owned the section, so the square mile, which is 640. And it looks like it was sold off over the years. There's a gas line that runs through the section right throughout the part that we still own. It looks like it was sold off over the years and dwindled down to an 80. And my whole life growing up, my grandpa owned it. But before that, it would have been his father-in-law. So my grandpa married in to a pretty large family, and he ended up with the deed over time. I think it's probably because he spent the most time there. One person who connected with it the closest, and him and my grandma ended up with the property. And that was my whole life, was going up there under them owning the property. And my grandpa, being the nice guy that he was, man, if anybody asked, "Hey, can I hunt?" It's like, yeah, he'd just let everybody hunt, right? So I'm hunting my grandma and grandpa's property with a dozen guys. One time in the 90s, we went up north, and I call it my up north, but I think it was my dad pulled in the driveway, and a guy came walking out of the woods at the driveway. And he's like, "Who are you and why are you here?" My dad's like, "It's our property." And the guy was selling hunts as a hunt club on our property at one point.
Oh, wow.
Just because it wasn't used that much. There just wasn't much activity up there, and they did it. We had I think it was like a single wide trailer on there that was from like the 50s, aluminum siding deal, and they had a hunt camp in there. And then
how much were those hunts? Do you know how much he was asking?
Not a clue. It was probably like $10 a day back then. Who knows? And knowing the deer quality that we used to have up there, yeah, I don't know. It was probably only pay if you shoot something. But yeah, so growing up, we started spending a lot more time there. My parents, they're not hunters, but they spend a ton of time there. They go up there every single weekend, and our family really like gravitated towards the property. Not that any other families didn't, but it was just more. And so my parents, my sister, myself, growing up as kids, we were there a lot. And over time, my grandma and grandpa spent time there. We spent time there, and it was just kind of like a expectation that eventually is going to get passed down to me. And that's actually what ended up happening. My grandparents both passed away. Deed went into a trust, and then it was distributed to my grandparents' children, which is my mom and her brothers, and then they filtered it back down to me. So cool. It kind of went the wrong direction, knowing which direction it needed to go for the tax purposes. So I got screwed over on taxes pretty hard because you can't pass down from like uncles back down to me without reopening the tax caps. But if it would have went the proper channel that it was supposed to, we wouldn't have necessarily had the same issue. But long story short, ended up coming to me as expected. And we still do family functions up there. We do big, huge family parties where we'll bring in people from all over the country that have just spaced out over time. And we still do summer parties up there. My mom and dad are huge with that. They are integral in planning that and doing all the stuff. So it's not like it's this closed off property that just Nick owns, but it is a property that just Nick hunts. So I kind of, with ownership, some of the handshake deals with people in the area that I don't even know, they kind of had to go away over time. So
yeah, well, hunting pressure is obviously one of the biggest detriments here or anywhere, but here for sure. So if you can limit that down and hunt it smart, I'd love to hear more about that here in a minute. How's the property set up? If you're pulling in the driveway, is it a long rectangular 80? Like how's it set up? Give me the whole breakdown.
So it used to be, I didn't get that part, but it was an 80. And then 5 of it got sold off while my grandpa was still alive to another relative. So they sold 5 acres in the northwest corner of the property. So now it's a 75. It's a triangle, or it's a rectangle with a little chunk taken out at the top left. So we come in from the north down the highway, and then I turn into the property, into the rectangle from the east side. And we have west winds most of the time, so that works out great. It would be better if camp was more north on the property than it is, but it's kind of center punched in there. And our camp's it's about 200 yards off the road, so it dives into the belly a little bit farther than a hunting camp would really want if you were to redesign it. But it's established. We have electricity, we have gas, we have we have well and water. We have all this stuff. It's not like we can just pick it up and move it. Yeah. So that is where it is. The good part is we enter from the east, and it is east adjusted, and we have mostly west winds, and often we have northwest winds. It blows most of our scent either into this giant cattail swamp, and at least across the road into another part of the pipeline. So there is a pipeline that runs underground through my property, and there's a station across the street from my driveway. So there's a lot of activity there anyway. I think they get a lot of human smell, human scent if there's an east wind. They get a lot of highway scent if there's an east wind. And that east wind comes every once in a while. And it's actually how I killed my buck this year, is I used that wind to my advantage. So it's laid out pretty decent. Could be better, but it's not the end of the world the way it's laid out.
Sure. So what percentage, you said you have a large cattail swamp. What percentage is swamp? What percentage is hardwoods, fields, etc.?
So we've got a lot of water on the property. We probably have 3 or 4 natural springs in different areas of the property. And we've got a lot of terrain features on the property. It's not a big flat piece. It's actually quite a hilly piece. And back when they built the highway years and years and years ago, a lot of our properties in the area were contracted out for gravel. So I have what we call a gravel pit on our property, and that's basically smack dab in the middle of it. And I've got basically it's a 20-foot cliff straight down, and it's all sand and gravel. And there's a couple roads that go up and around, and give us some terrain. But on one side of the gravel pit, I've got 2 natural spring ponds that are just glass, crystal clear, beautiful ponds. And those funnel into a couple of creeks that eventually funnel down towards the highway, and they cross underneath the highway. And there's a big cattail marsh that all this funnels into. That marsh is probably 10 or 12 acres. But if I look at all the different marshes on the property because of these springs, I probably have about 20 acres of marsh total. And then when I look at the rest of the property, I only probably have 15 acres of hardwoods. And I've got a lot of what used to be open area. At one point, it was a farm, a working farm. So what used to be pasture is now autumn olive, honeysuckle, all the things we don't want. Creates great cover, but there's alternatives that I'd rather have there. About 10 years ago, we had this giant open field above the gravel pit, and we had these tiny little trees starting to sprout everywhere, little pine trees, and they're white pines. And within 10 years, the white pines just absolutely took over this opening. You can't walk through it. Deer can go through it like butter, but a human, without poking your eye out, you can't really get through this stuff. And now those trees are all about 20 feet tall. They're choking each other out from 8 feet down. It's crazy. So it got really thick in the last decade on the property. And the property hunt's pretty small. So our camp is about halfway through the property, north and south. And I hunt the south half of the property almost exclusively. To the north, there's not a single tree you can get in. There might be like 1 or 2 trees you can get in. The rest is pure honeysuckle and autumn olive, and it's like almost impenetrable. We've got a couple of 2-track trails running through it, but my gosh, it's thick. We haven't figured out how to hunt that yet. I've really stuck to the south side because that's where most of my terrain changes are. I've got a cliff. I've got a lot of water. I've got cedar swamps. I've got cattail swamps. I've got some hardwoods. And then on the very south end of the property, I've got it's either 5, 6, or 7 acre hay field that a farmer up the road farms. He's got milk or dairy cows. And we just let him, it was a nasty old field. We just let him take over, and he cleaned it up and turned it into a hay field. And this year he actually planted corn for the first time on it. So I've got a little bit of groomed aspect down there, and it just kind of lays out into a pretty diverse piece. It hunts small because I don't hunt the north half, but it's very, very diverse. Like I can move 300 yards and be in a totally different type of scenery.
Okay. And yeah, I was surprised when you said it hunts small because of the undulation you mentioned it has. But if you're not hunting the top because it's all very, very thick. Do a lot of deer stay in that top half too?
Yeah. So when you're walking the 2-track through that top half, I mean, you can look into every once in a while, you can look into the honeysuckle or autumn olive or whatever, and you can see deer in there, and they're watching. They know you're not leaving the trail. They know that we're people, and they know we're sticking to the 2-track, but they'll watch you from there, and you just can't penetrate it to get in there. And they slice right through it when they want to go. But yeah, it holds a ton of deer, and it really appears it holds primarily does up in that north half. Now, the south half that I hunt, I mean, this is good for me, but it really seems like the bucks hang out. So in the summertime, I have a ton of bucks through the velvet season, but they always shift in September, and I get Some stay, most of them leave, and then I get a couple of new ones, right? Every year. It's almost like clockwork. And the older ones seem to stay until they turn it into their area. But I don't get the doe pictures in the south half of the property. I just don't. Not until the snow flies, which is kind of nice for me. So I think I'm somewhere on the outskirts of the bedding area for like the doe's primary bedding area, and therefore I don't think the bucks just don't feel the pet pressure and they use that area. But yeah, it hunts strange, but it took me a long time to learn it. I was hunting it wrong for years, right? I didn't care about the wind when I was younger, and once I learned how to use the highway to my advantage, everything changed.
Okay, let's talk about that. But first, where do you think the bucks are bedding? Which part of the cover do you think they like the most in your area?
Yeah. So I'll lay it out this way. On to the west of me, it's not even on my property, it's on a neighboring property. They created a gigantic bedding area, huge bedding area. Fortunately for me, I'm downwind of that often, right? So on the majority west wind, I'm on the downwind side of it. And they're technically on a hill or from an elevation standpoint from me. And there's like this tiered slope system through the hardwoods. And that's this slim portion of hardwoods that I have. And that wind really blows down. And they use those different height tiers and they travel north and south on those. So I think the bucks use that as like travel corridor mostly. But honestly, I think they bed even further to the east, either on my property line against the highway or even across on the other neighbors. It's really thick in there. We've got a mixture between cattail swamp, which you can walk through, and it's incredible what's inside of there. The highways they have carved out, but those cedar swamps also, they have those root structures that are kind of above the water, and there's little big moss pads and stuff. You can just see they've got all these bedding mounds in there too. Pretty sure they stay in there and in that new growth white pine area. They can see out from that area, but again, penetrating that's extremely difficult. So I think they feel pretty safe. And some of that part of my property isn't really like usable recreation wise. So I mentioned earlier, my mom and dad spend a ton of time up there in the summer. They don't deviate into that area. It's just not like usable space. You can't ride a four-wheeler for fun through there, and stick to the trails. And so it remains pretty untouched for the most part. And that's, I think, east adjusted on my property. So anytime they want to move over to the doe bedding area, they're cutting straight through where I am ultimately. So yeah, I think east adjusted is kind of where the bucks seem to stay.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so you've got the bedding. What about food? What's your prime food source there?
So food is interesting. I've never put food on the property. I say that until recently. I've never put food on the property. I've had the times where I've taken a rake out there, scratched the ground, and did throw and grow type of stuff just over the years, right? Everybody's done that, and it's never been fruitful in any way. Like I said earlier, I got the south part of my property. I've got a 5 to 7 acre hayfield, and that seems to be pretty common year-round food. They do, I think, 3 cuts a year on that hay. It used to be really alfalfa mixed, and that alfalfa's kind of slowed down in the mixture, I've noticed. And with that, I'm noticing a lot less activity down there. Now, to the north of me, there's a rotating crop field, and it's sometimes corn, sometimes beans. But lately, I've noticed that it's a couple of years it hasn't been used or farmed. So the food is actually a little bit more scarce, and there isn't a ton of corn and beans directly around my property. Within a mile and a half, there is. They can travel and get that food, but between myself and my neighbors, it's food plots now, and that's the majority of the food now. So, I'm newer to the food plot game, and I haven't given them anything too good yet. But we're turning this gravel pit of a property into something right now. So, and that's something you're aware that you've helped me with this year is to start that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got the nice sand beach, so I understand your pain.
Every time I hear you say that in a podcast, I just think of my gravel pit. I've got the gravel. There's sand in there for sure, but man, is it gravelly. And I took a drone video of me turning up the ground this year, and it looks like I have this beautiful black luscious dirt, and it's just not true at all. It's totally deceiving in the video. And anybody who ever sees that is probably like, wow, that's the richest looking soil. It is not. It is not. That stuff dried out in 30 minutes, and it was like blinding as snow. So it was pretty It's pretty rough for planting. Now, around those little spring pockets and the swamp pockets, there is a lot of black, rich, beautiful soil. But as you get up the hill away from that into the terrain, it's very gravelly, very gravelly.
Okay.
Now, do you have an idea of how many acres of plots you're going to put in on the 75? Or how many have you put in? How many are you going to put in maybe in the future?
Yep. So this year was the first year I really put a significant amount of effort into it. And we started in the spring with Nitro Boost on majority of what I was planting. And I had, I think, an acre and a half in one area. I think I had 2 3/4 acre plots. So that's another acre and a half. I got the little kill plot I put in, that's about a half acre. So I'm at like 3.5, maybe 4 acres is what I ended up doing. Just because of the rest of the property being so thick with brush. If I could clear out that brush the right way and plan it out right, I probably have a ton more opportunity. But from the openings that currently exist, that's probably 4 acres is my max right now. Plus
Sure.
the field to the south end of my property. That's not a food plot, but it's food.
I was wondering if you could, on that hayfield that's kind of, losing the alfalfa, if you could cross seed more alfalfa into that.
Yeah.
And maybe get some of that back if you want to draw the deer down there.
Sure.
Just a thought that came into my head. But no, 3.5 acres, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, it really is, especially going from what I was calling virgin ground. One of the questions I asked actually was at the Deer Hunter Collective that Kevin put on. I was preparing to do the Nitro Boost, and I think I asked you, I'm like, look, I know that like the ethos and really the idea behind Vitalize is not to be breaking the ground up too much. But being virgin ground, I was really worried about just seeding over top of what's existing right now. And, your response was lightly break up the ground. So I tried to keep like the tines on a rototiller a little bit high. So I was just barely trickling over top of it. And I think what happened is the Nitro Boost struggled. I didn't have any amendments in the soil, and I had a soil test from the previous year. I didn't know how to read it the right way, so I didn't do anything with it. And Nitro Boost struggled. Now, I did also plant Nitro Boost behind my house here because I had enough of it for here. And my soil here is beautiful, and it flourished. I had, what was it? Sunflowers taller than me. I think I posted a few pictures online of that. It was incredible. But up there, it was like a desert everywhere, those tines at the ground. So I took that soil test, and I think I called you and Ale. I think, yeah, definitely Ale, but I think you were on the call too. And Ale's like, let's look at your soil test that you had from the previous year. Show me pictures of what you're seeing. And he's like, none of this matches at all. So I don't know if it was just like a fluke that what was being read in the test versus what really existed out there wasn't matching up. But what Al was seeing was totally different from what the test was telling us. And I think it had to do with the organic matter and how it showed it being there, but it wasn't. So maybe it was error on my part on the way I collected it. But so Al threw me a few amendment ideas, and we ended up doing that for the fall, which I couldn't plant until August 30th, which was pretty late. And we had a drought this year, a huge drought at the last half of the summer. But it did come in. That's the best part. The carbon load following the Nitro Boost did come in. So thankfully I put a seclusion cage up. Otherwise I wouldn't have thought that it worked. I think I sent you pictures and I'm like, I didn't expect to see this, like I would have thought the food plot failed, but the deer are just hammering it, absolutely hammering it. And the seclusion cage, it's got stuff this tall inside of it, and everything around it looks like a mowed lawn. Crazy.
So how tall do you think that growth was inside the cage?
When I first checked it, so between August 30th, when I planted it, and when I first laid my eyes on it, was actually October 26th, the day I killed my buck. The first time I saw it was October 26th, and it was in the dark after I killed my buck. So I didn't even want to touch that area. It wasn't part of where the wind was working with me. So I didn't see it till dark that next day. And inside of that seclusion cage at that time was about 6 inches tall. And by the time I think mid-November rolled around, it was probably 8 inches tall. Where everywhere else, again, just looked like a mowed lawn. And I think the lawn aspect of it, or the grassiness, was a lot of the rye. So on top of doing carbon load, just to get organic matter in there, we threw a ton of rye, just additional rye in there just to start building something up. And yeah, so there's a lot of rye in there. I think I may have overseeded with the carbon load because I think I've got beets that are or radishes that are over competing in areas, but lessons learned, right? So next year, at least I'll have
Yeah.
organic matter to work with.
Yeah. No,
Absolutely.
I can commiserate with that. I think on the 70, it's all beach sand like Andy's. It's not as bad as Andy's, but
Hmm.
it's pretty bad. So whenever you can hold any moisture there or anything like that, that's what we recommend. And to your point about not working the ground, I mean, yeah, we want minimum tillage if you can, but some guys only have a rototiller. Some guys only have a
Hmm.
disc, so you kind of have to work with what you got. It's just, you might have pros and cons to every
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
Did you need to add fertilizer for the fall? And are you gonna, get that going and kind of wean off it into the more natural stuff? Or what's your thoughts on that? Because I know I had to, I'm gonna consider bulking up on the no-till nurture for the 70 because that ground
Hmm.
needs some more
Yep.
organic matter, more nutrients. So
Yep. So what we did was we doubled the recommended amount of no-till nurture for this property in the main area that I planted the carbon load on top of the gravel pit. So I doubled the rate of that before I even planted the carbon load. Then I
perfect.
took the rototiller on the back of the tractor and I just lightly tickled the dirt just to get it under the surface a little bit. And then I put the what's it called, the carbon load out and all of the rye, just absolutely loaded this area up. And now I don't have a cultipacker, and there's a lot of creative ways to do this, but I took the rototiller and I just set it down and I just disengaged it, so it's basically a neutral, and I just pulled it around. And each one of those times, it pressed a little divot in the ground. It looked perfect, really. It was like super clean by the end of it, and pushed everything in the ground. And it may have been premature, but I followed that up with a dosage of the biocharge too. So I mixed up a pretty heavy dosage of biocharge and I hit that the same day. I had intentions on making it back before the season started in October, but I never did. And I would have to imagine if I did hit that again once the leaf or the greenery started coming up, it would have been even more impressive. But I never made it back in time. So I still have a stockpile of that for next year. I'm probably going to be able to at least hit it with at the beginning and hopefully mid for Nitro Boost too. So
Great.
what we're going to do is now that I've done these amendments, I have no clue what the soil sample would look like. So next steps has to be get a new soil sample, and then we'll review it probably with you guys and Ale and see what the doctor recommends there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a couple things you mentioned there. The soil test not matching up to, the CEC and organic matter of what was actually going on.
Yep.
Um, Amazon makes soil probes. They can get them in 2 foot, 4 foot. That
Hmm.
gives you, like a core sample. Very accurate way to get soil testing
Yeah.
done. Figured I'd share that tip. And then I like your tip about the rototiller disengaging it and
Yeah.
driving it around as a cultipacker. I don't think we've covered that in 360 something episodes here. So that's a good tip for folks who don't have a cultipacker.
Well, I was pretty bummed out after Nitro Boost didn't take, and I don't blame the seed at all because also what I noticed is after I put Nitro Boost down, I didn't cultipack again. I don't have one,
Mm.
but I didn't do anything. It literally sat on top of this drying gravel and got baked in the sun all summer long.
Those
It
bigger
had no
seeds is
chance.
probably, yeah, it's
I
probably
had
more
yeah,
important to pack that
I
mix
didn't
than the
help
fall
it
mix.
at all. So my next step is, I'm talking to you, like, are you cultipacking? I'm shoot, I didn't do that. And I know I didn't. So I'm like, I think I screwed up the Nitro Boost. But so I'm like, this is the redemption chance. And I still didn't have a cultipacker. I'm like, this should work. And I tried it and it worked beautifully. So if you don't have a cultipacker, that's an option. And you do have a rototiller. So, and I
Life
don't
ha-
have a rototiller. I borrowed one, right? So if you have guys that have things that let you borrow them, do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even F-150 truck tires with a country
Yeah.
music player. And
Sure.
I may or
Something.
may not have done that before too. So no, that all sounds really good.
Yeah.
You mentioned 15 acres of hardwoods and timber. Are you doing any logging, any TSI work so far?
Hmm.
I know you're new into the habitat game, newer, but
Yep.
you're a quick learner and successful dude. So what's your thoughts on that program here when the season ends?
Yep. So I'm actually in the process of figuring out what I'm going to do with this. So I haven't actually done anything yet. A friend of mine and myself, 2 Marches ago, we went up and we cut a 1/4 acre strip out of this transition between cedar swamp and this aspen stand that's gotten quite mature. It's got like really immature feathered edges and it's super mature in the middle. And right in this transition is a seasonal pond on the property. And in the summertime, it's very deep. In the fall, it's dry. We tried to cut a 1/4 acre strip, and it's only about 40 yards wide out of there. And we completely removed all those trees. So that was a clear cut. And my idea was I wanted to make a clover strip that runs through there and gets some food just in the middle of an area that's kind of barren for food outside of woody browse, which I know it's extremely important too. But my other thought was, after listening to probably one of your podcasts, was all these nutrient shoots that come up out of these stumps. I'm like, if I can provide them a ton of stumps, I might get a ton of nutrient. And that happened, but the seed didn't take because the canopy wasn't nearly open enough. So even though it's 40 yards wide, all these mature trees still just totally covered out this area, and I couldn't get seed to take. So that's the only attempt I've done so far at any kind of tree removal. But, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I kind of took a pretty hard hit on taxes because my taxes got uncapped and got reassessed for 2/3 of the property and all this stuff. And so I've been looking at, like you can do qualified forest program, I think QFP. Yeah, QFP.
Yes,
and
sir.
You can end up filing for some tax breaks through this program and everything. And I know people that have done that successfully. But I was a little worried about how much timber I really have on the property versus what qualifies. And I actually had a private, I think it was a forester, right? Because I have to have a forester write a plan, right? A forest management plan. And he looked at it and he said, yeah, you have plenty of trees for this. So then I called the state. I'm like, how do I start the process? So the state ended up sending a state forester last January, and we walked the property. So last January, when we walked the property, I actually found the shed. The first time I found a shed of the buck I killed this year. It was my mom, myself, and the forester. And we were walking the edge of I call it the farmer's field, but it's my alfalfa hayfield. And my mom kicked up the shed and she's like, holy shit. I'm like, oh, yeah, that is holy shit. I know that buck. He evaded me that year. But what I'm getting at is we walked the whole property. Seemed like there was a lot of potential there. The problem that I have with actually getting this area of the property logged, that 15 acres of hardwoods has either some level of creek, spring, or swamp completely segregating it off from the rest of the property. So to get equipment back there is going to be messy, and it may mess with, some possibly protected wetland. I mean, to a degree, there's, with the pipeline running through the property, we have like wetland delineation tags that randomly get put on things throughout the year. There's a lot of, I think, eyes on the wetland aspect of the property. So we'd have to really cautiously approach this, or access from a neighboring property if that's a potential.
Yeah.
But I've been waiting in a holding pattern since last January to get the approval from the state to get funding to pay for a plan to do this. I'm almost at the point where I just want to do it myself, like pay a private guy to come do it, instead of waiting for the state, because it's been incredibly slow. And every time I call, they're just like, yep, you're on the list. You're on the list. You're on the list. I'm like, holy cow.
Where at on the list?
Where at on the list? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Like
I'm at the point
Santa
I might,
Claus's list.
Yeah.
I mean, even if I paid a guy privately to come write the forest plan and it got approved and I could do it, it would pay for itself year one. I just got the winter tax bill and I'm looking at that thing like, damn, you should have done it already. So no, I haven't done anything yet.
Are you thinking about saddle hunting but haven't taken the plunge yet? Well, I can assure you, latitudeoutdoors.com is right where I would start if I were you. I got my brand new Method 3 2-panel saddle this year, the most comfy saddle on the market, ready to go this fall. Also, guys, I've been rocking the Method 2 for years. Method 3 came out, it couldn't get any better? Well, it did. This thing is insane. Check it out, latitudeoutdoors.com, but don't forget the Profile Saddle platform and their brand new Ranger 33 packs. I run the Ranger 22 right now, and I'm definitely looking at the Ranger 33 to add to my arsenal for this fall. Check them out, guys. Great people, a great company, Michigan-based, and they're already whacking bucks this season. LatitudeOutdoors.com. Do you have some awesome shed antlers laying around that you don't know what to do with? Maybe sitting on your desk or bookshelf? Put them on the wall with the Antler Anchor Company. My good buddy Ryan started this company. They make stainless steel shed antler mounts, European mounts, something you can be proud of putting on the wall. Think of a boat anchor with antlers coming out of the top of it, Antler Anchor. I'm a boater. I love this idea. It's one of the coolest logos I've ever seen. And your sheds and European mounts look great on the wall with them. Check them out at antleranchorco.com. Tell them the Habitat Podcast sent you. Great piece of machined stainless ready to put on your wall to hang those trophies.
I think it was $1,200 to have the private forester write the plan, then submitted it to the NRCS office, got approved, got in the program. And I think you have to log maybe, if I remember my contract correctly, once every 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to log right away. But the way my logger did it across those soft spots where the springs are and the creek, they lay down those crane mats, right in the mud, and they can pull them when they're done. So it's not like you're gonna have a huge, hole in there, because they don't want to get stuck either. So
sure,
maybe to ease the worry a little bit on the damage to the wetlands and maybe get you that tax break sooner. Yeah, might be something worth doing.
And maybe I'll get the name of your guy from you so that I can look at doing that to move forward. Because I also don't want to tie myself into a plan that ultimately isn't favorable for us, right? I want to look at it pretty close, because I mean, you're signing yourself up for what, 20 years usually, and
yeah, I don't recall
if you don't follow
exactly
through on that plan, I'm pretty sure you can owe back taxes on what your discount was, right? So I want to be pretty cautious as to whether or not I do select one, or what that plan looks like. But I think that's where these private guys are pretty solid from what I've been reading. You know, like they want to know what your goals are, right? My goals aren't to make as much cash as possible off the back of this property and sell it, right? Like that's what a lot of guys do. They flip properties and make some cash. This is a family heirloom. I want it to be preserved. I want it to be the best for all different wildlife. If there's cash involved with removing some trees, bonus, right? So I want to make sure that whoever I do select or whatever the plan is, it really aligns with long-term goals with the family too, rather than getting stuck and signed up with something that ultimately gets me into a pickle. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I had that option down here on my 40 in this county. They don't offer any quality forest program. They don't offer anything to reduce taxes. So you can sign up for some of the cost share stuff, like you're waiting on the cost share to get the plan made and stuff like that. Maybe brush management for autumn olive, but man, I hear you on the tax bill, brother. I hear you.
Yeah,
it's rough.
Yep.
All right. Well, you mentioned that autumn olive on the top half. You mentioned some better alternatives, possibly. What have you read or learned, or what are you thinking on if you're ever going to do anything with that autumn olive and honeysuckle? What would that be?
Well, I've heard it's pretty hard to get rid of, right? You have to be pretty aggressive and consistent with it. You know, I've heard people getting choppers out there and dropping some chemicals down there to kill them. I hear the hack and squirt method. I hear you have to get the whole root ball system, otherwise they're going to spring shoots back up. And so I know it's an aggressive process to get rid of all of that. So that's slightly intimidating, honestly. But man, just what I'm seeing with the way that these deer treat these white pines, I'd rather see that area either food or white pines or a combination of both. And if I could control that and plan it out, you know, I could plan it out with the wind. I've got a road on that part of the property up there, and access could be like perfectly planned out. But today I just can't even penetrate it. So if I could figure out how to properly and I guess effectively get rid of all that, we could completely change the layout of that part of the property. There's a lot of potential up there. That would be the north half of the property. And I have a road on the north side, a dirt road, and I've got a highway on the east side. So tons of access opportunity up there. But I'd probably re-thicken it after thinning it, right, with pine, and then I don't know, some kind of food shoots. And what I haven't mentioned yet is beyond my camp area, if I go west a little bit further into the center of the property, which is kind of like the midpoint of the whole rectangle, I've got an apple orchard that's probably from the 1800s itself. So we've got 30 or 40 trees that drop apples every year. I don't know what kind they are. They're ancient and they're wicked. I mean, it's one of those really cool areas that we maintain the grass underneath them, so you can like walk through them. I actually got married there. My wife and I got married there. My sister got married there. It's just a cool looking part of the property.
Wow.
But right now it's an apple orchard that just draws in a ton of deer. It's really hard to hunt, and you can throw a stone over to where we camp. So it's not in the right spot for hunting, but it's a super good food source year round or seasonally for those guys. But it's kind of like that midpoint of the property where from there you can go south and hunt the south half of the property, or go north into this area I don't touch. So if I really laid it out right, I could give them apples for food. Obviously, that's already there, but I could play off of that in that trail system up there that we already maintain. Yeah, I mean, there's a ton of opportunity. It's just kind of untouched.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like some directional mowed paths or mulch paths through that olive could be, planted in food, connecting some of these highlights in your property together. Yeah. That, man, what I would give for an old apple orchard on my property. I mean,
I know it's pretty cool, to be honest. And the apples aren't even that bad. You get one of the trees. We prune them up every once in a while, and the trees that you prune just produce incredible apples. And it's hard to prune though because of the size of these things. These trees are huge. I mean, they've been let go for 100 years, but the apples they produce are pretty significant.
Awesome.
There was one thing you mentioned a minute ago, the highway. And I've watched your videos, by the way, guys. If you want to see Nick's videos, he does a great job filming his hunts over at the Deer Hunter Experience on YouTube. And I think that the highway, what are the advantages to the highway? I've seen in the video, it sounds like you can talk a little bit louder. You don't have to be as quiet, which people would think like, oh, that sucks, but like, it's kind of a good thing.
So the highway is a double-edged sword. One of the negatives is it's ugly to the ears, right? You hear it non-stop. And you hear it in all my videos. I can hunt the farthest square inch from that highway on my property, and you hear it, right? It's ugly sounding. It's not that pure nature wilderness sound all the time. When there's no cars, you get that, but that's typically not the case. The advantages to the highway is one is I can walk it, I can bike it, I can ride a four-wheeler along the side of it to get from the north side to the south side of the property. So I can, under complete silence from the wildlife, get to a different part of the property. The part of the highway that my property butts up to is almost all swamp. So the deer aren't seeing out to the highway either, right? They can only hear the highway. They can only smell the highway, which the highway just smells like fuel, right? Fuel, rubber, and that's about it. So I have a scent advantage. I have a sound advantage. I have a sight advantage. So I can traverse the entire length of the property completely undetected. Now that is also on the east side of the property too. So on a normal west wind, I'm totally undetected as well. Now, whatever deer's on the other side of the highway is probably smelling me. But at the same time, I don't think they're terribly concerned based on the highway smelling like a highway, right? So I don't think I stink too bad, but yeah, it seems to be an advantage for me. From there, I could penetrate into the property at any point, and typically I'm going face into the wind. Now, when I killed my buck this year, I had an east wind, so the wind was to my back, and I was throwing my scent into the property. But my thought process is I'm throwing my scent into the property again from the highway on a busy day. High likelihood that my scent's either getting, imagine like a thermal, right? Or when a car drives by and the wind blows too, and it sucks your scent too. I imagine the scent's probably just ripping down the highway more than penetrating in. So on the day I killed my buck, I used the highway and I moved down south, and I walked along the edge, the transition. So the way my property lays out on the south side is I've got that farmer's field. It's alfalfa hay mixture. This year the farmer planted corn, but it was pretty late and it was pretty unsuccessful. So the stalks were still up, but there's just kind of like whisker hairs poking up. The south of my property, the neighboring property, has the same mirror image field too. The same farmer farms both sides. So I went all the way down to the fence line, and it's pretty strong rolling hills in there. I didn't want to walk along the field edge to tree edge on my property because there's a chance there's deer bedded there looking out. So I went all the way south and I walked the fence line and I used those hills to my advantage. And right where there's a valley between two hills is where I cut across and got into the swamp. So I used the highway to get down there. Then I used the hills to hide myself and get into the swamp. And instead of walking the normal trail system that we have for recreational use, I just kind of crawled through the cedar swamp, which was almost silent. And with the highway ripping, it's totally silent. So the cedar swamp's quiet just because of like that peat moss or whatever kind of quiet ground there is inside of there. And I was able to come, basically made a big square J. So I went down the highway, entered the property, and then I shot back into it. And then I started moving back towards the highway again to get into where I think the deer were bedded. And the deer where I thought were bedded was in that piece of property I said is basically untouched. It's like hard to recreate on it. There's nothing there for us as visitors to the property. It's mostly untouched. And I didn't have a ton of cameras out this year. I only actually had 2 trail cameras on 75 acres. And both are cell cameras. One was in this area that I was going to that day, and another's on the area that I was hunted in the morning. And I guess we'll just get into the deer story.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
So the video actually went live with today is December 4th. The video went live yesterday on the Deer Hunter Experience, which is the Deer Hunter Podcast's YouTube channel. So you can see it there. And it's just a short video. We'll do a longer, more in-depth video that explains the story next year. But so basically, I had an east wind. I don't always stay up there when I hunt up there. So I woke up pretty early. I was on the road by 3 a.m. down here to get there. It's a 2-hour drive. Got to the property. I knew I'd have an east wind all day. So I knew whatever I did had to be pretty strategic. I really wanted to hunt the spot that I was starting to describe a minute ago. But I knew that from a morning activity side, there just wasn't a ton of it there on camera. And I always do pretty good in the hardwood section in the mornings. It has to do with, I think the deer are coming out of neighboring food, coming back to bed, and they're getting back downwind traditionally of that doe bedding area that's not on my property. So I stayed on the north end of that because, again, there's a doe bedding area to the west of my property, and it runs north and south. I stayed just north of that bedding area on my property so that the east wind would blow across and not hit that doe bedding area. And I assumed I'd have a buck coming out of there in the morning. Well, a buck came from the other side, came from the east, snuck right underneath me, and I noticed him at like 10 yards, and it was a nice 8-point. It was a 3-year-old buck, and I had zero memory of ever seeing this buck before, but I looked down, and there he was. I'm like, oh, gosh. So I got the camera on him right away, and if I would have not worried about the camera, picked up my bow, I would have probably had a chance sooner. But I know for a fact I would have missed that deer because I still missed him a couple minutes later. So he works his way out to 20 yards. I get the camera on. I'm all set up. I get my bow off the hook and I pull back. I'm like, I'm shooting this buck. He's not the target buck on the property, but man, he got my blood going, right? So my heart's pounding. And I shoot right over. This thing's back at 20 yards. It was a chip shot. There was no reason. I even stopped the deer with a mat and he wasn't walking. My brain was just like fried, man. I was so excited over this thing. In the video, I looked like a complete idiot. I still posted it, but I stopped the deer who wasn't really even moving. All I did was alert him to my presence. He looks up at me and I shoot right over his back. I'm glad he ducked because then I probably would have hit him up high. And I did that last year and I hate doing that on deer. So he ducked. I didn't even hit him at all. In the video, I slowed it down. I think like the whip wobbling shaft in the air even skipped off his back. I see the knock kick up a little bit. But there was nothing on the arrow. So got that out of my system. I couldn't figure out why the hell that happened until I realized my sight dial was at 35 yards. My God, that was a rookie mistake. I always tell myself, put it back in the home position. It's always at 20, right? And I had it dialed to 35 for another embarrassing reason is I dropped my platform on my bow when I was hanging my platform one morning the week before. And I bent to my cam on my bow. So I had to have my bow in the shop. They rush ordered a cam from Prime. They put 2 new cams on my bow. And I was sighting it in the yard the day before I was going hunting. So I left it at 35 yards. I screwed up a chip shot. Would have been an awesome buck. But honestly, the way everything panned out, I'm assuming I would have spent my day dealing with that if I would have hit him. instead of following through with the rest of the plan that led to me shooting my target buck. So I'll take a win out of it. But so I stayed in that stand until about 10 in the morning. East wind was still happening all day long. I snuck out the exact same way I got in. I didn't bump any deer. I stayed again. I was just north of the whole bedding area to the west of me, so my east wind was pretty safe. I got back to my camp, and I knew that if I wanted to hunt the area that I really wanted to hunt on an east wind, it could be sketchy. So rather than blowing out the whole property, I thought take the highway. Even though I'm blowing my wind into the area I'm ultimately going to hunt, I think the highway helps me. So it clearly did. I sneak down the highway. I enter the property from the south, and then I move up north and then ultimately back east. It's a giant J hook into the spot I was hunting. Now, the spot I'm hunting, I also threw my leftover carbon load, and it did not take. It was, again, August 30th, 0 ground prep. I threw it on top of some other weeds, and it just didn't really take. But I put a camera there, and I had some pretty cool action on camera leading up to this. I had a return buck who I think was either 4 or 5. He's absolute sausage of a body. This thing's a tank. I call him Pig for obvious reasons. And I think I put a picture of him in the video. But he's a mainframe 7-point, nothing impressive on top. His antlers just get thicker every year and wider, but he's got short tines. I mean, he's just a big old deer with no real good antler genetics. Absolutely would have shot him given the chance, knowing he's the biggest and oldest buck on the property. But the buck I was really after is a 4-year-old. And last year he evaded me all year long. And I have video of him getting by me at 30 yards. I couldn't film and shoot at the same time, all these things, right? All the reasons why. And that buck came back in December after he disappeared in November. My mom found his shed, which I have here. So this was 2024 shed of that buck on his left side. So
beauty.
He was a 9-point. He was a 9-point. He has a 5 on his left and a 4 on his right in 2024. And he became a target for me, but I couldn't figure him out. And I didn't put enough effort into figuring him out because I really wanted that buck I was calling Pig, that big old fat body buck. And so I knew this buck was alive in July of this year when he showed back up in the summertime. And he was hitting a scrape that I put in there. So I put a mock scrape in July. And people who are into mock scrapes, they know they're a year-round thing. But people who aren't, they really don't understand that it's a year-round communication mechanism. So I put a mock scrape in July, and this buck was one of the first ones to hit it. And I had a few bachelor bucks, groups of bucks that were pretty mature, 3-year-olds. And then I had this buck who was a 4-year-old, and he would never hit it with another deer around. So he was pretty reclusive. He didn't hang out with other deer. I never even got a picture of him with a doe in sight or anything, right? He was only ever by himself. But I had pictures of him on 2 different cameras, and I could tell I think I had his core area on my property. So my only thought was, with us using the property all summer long like we do, and him sticking around, he's probably staying in that spot that we don't go. And sure enough, that's how I hunted it that day. And so I thought to myself, I'm either going to see nothing or I'm probably only going to see a nice buck, which the odds worked out in my favor. But I snuck into the spot and I was throwing the east wind. I was on the south side of what I thought his bedding area was. And I was throwing my east wind right across the back side of the property or of that bedding area. And I thought he might come down and J-hook around to try to get into this spot that he always seems to cross, which would be putting him almost in the path of my wind. But he seems to follow a 2-track and not deviate from the 2-track. And I thought my wind might just be skirting by it without crossing it. And that's exactly what happened. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was a long sit. You know, I got up in that tree, I think at noon. First tree I got into, I realized I couldn't hunt and see into the area I wanted to. So I got down and hung on my saddle in another tree. And I'm like, man, I can barely see into the spot I want to shoot to, but I can still shoot there if the deer's on part of it. So I get in that tree, the wind's blowing, almost risky, but it kind of worked. My thought was, if a deer is going to scent check this spot and not get my scent, they're going to think it's totally safe because chances are they're going to catch anything in this area. But I was just barely off of where that wind was going. And That's exactly what happened. So I hear like a sneeze or a cough, and it wasn't like a deer blowing. It wasn't a grunt. It wasn't a snort wheeze, but it was just like a sound of I think he was stretching. I think he got up out of his bed like 5 o'clock, got up out of his bed, and sure enough, he's walking right down that 2-track. I'm like, holy crap, it's happening. So I get one camera going, I get the other camera facing me, and he starts coming in, and he stops at 30 yards at this white pine, and he starts raking this tree. I'm like, sweet. And I thought he was perfectly broadside, but in the video, he's actually slightly quartering too. And I'm thinking to myself, I said, if he does what he usually does on the pictures, he's going to walk towards me. But being in the tree that I'm in, there's a really good chance he gets away from me before I can move the camera and shoot my bow. So he's what I thought was perfectly broadside, 30 yards. Like there's no way he can hear me or my bow go off over the highway and him raking the tree. So I decided I'm just going to shoot. At 30 yards, I've experienced a lot of deer ducking and a lot of high hits. I just have. I'm a bow hunter. I've taken those shots. It hasn't worked out in the past. So I was pretty cautious. I thought, I just don't think he's going to hear me and react to the bowstring like some deer will at that 30-yard range. So I decided to go ahead and take the shot, and it worked out perfectly. I saw the knock disappear right behind the shoulder blades. I like immediately just like, when you do smoke them, right? We always say, I smoked them. Well, I'm pretty sure I say that a lot of times. And I started, I couldn't contain myself. You can see me in the video. I look like a fool. I'm like, my facial expressions are going crazy. I'm shaking like crazy. He runs right under my tree stand and goes into the swamp behind me that I snuck through. The problem is when he hit the swamp, he went silent. Again, that moss that covers these cedar swamps is just silent. So I didn't hear anything. And I'm like, he's right here behind me in the video. I'm like, he's right here. And I had no clue. He was already dead. But I got down out of the tree. I'm like, I know the shot was so good. This deer's dead. I know it. So I go to my arrow. I check my arrow. It's covered in blood. But I couldn't find a speck of blood outside of the arrow. Not one drop of blood. Andy, I just heard your story about how you had zero blood on your blood trail. I heard a story about Kevin earlier, a chemist, and he had zero blood for a little bit, and then a deer opened up. I am in the same situation right now. I mean, there's not a drop of blood. Cut on contact, 2-blade with bleeders. This arrow zipped right through him, hit right where I wanted. I'm like, there's just no doubt in my mind that this was a bad shot. I think I hard shot the dang thing. And I'm like, there's no blood. Well, the guy who runs our basically I'll call it our co-op, but our group chat, he's also a local like certified dog tracker in the area. And I call him. I'm like, man, Ron, here's a still shot. First of all, I texted him a screenshot from my video camera. I'm like, arrow hits here. And he's basically like, that's a dead deer. I'm like, I know, but there's no blood. He's like, all right. And he put down his dinner, and he was there in a couple minutes.
Nice.
And so I'm just looking into the swamp. I didn't want to mess it up too much. I've never formally had a dog. I had a buddy with a dog to help me one time, but it was a pet dog that he trained for himself. This is the first time I called a real dog tracker in to come do this kind of work. And it was incredible. This is my first experience with it. He gets the dog on the trail, and his dog Bandit, he just sniffs the trail, and he confirms everything. He walks the exact trail that I saw this thing, videotape this thing run down right under my stand into the woods. Again, zero blood. And he's like, are you sure, that's where you hit the deer? And I'm like, dude, it's where I hit the deer. It is. And it took 5 minutes to find this thing. The dog walked straight to the deer. We found one spot with a leaf of blood that came out of his mouth. He coughed it up, but nothing came out of either side of this deer. And dog goes straight to it. He's like, here's your deer, by the way. I'm like, what? So I turn my camera back on, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, thank you. And for me, it was the biggest buck I've ever shot. It was cool because I have a story with him, and that's this right here. So this was his 2024 shed on his left side, and this is his 2025 growth, which is incredibly different.
Wow.
And so he went from being a 9-point last year, a 4x5, to a 5x5 mainframe. And then he's got all kinds of trash at the bottom. So he's got
That's cool. Look at that
couple stickers
trash.
on that side and then a little bit on this side. So yeah. We have a genetic pool on our property, and either they have all the brow tines or no brow tines.
Okay.
So we're in an APR actually, and I am less than a mile into the APR because I'm near a county line, and we have a 6-point, and we're in a 3-point APR per side. I have a 4-year-old 6-point that is my number 2 buck behind this guy, and he's the most aggressive buck on the property. He's actually now bigger than the buck I was calling Pig. But he just got these teeny little brows. I've got several mature 6-points, which is crazy. Some don't have brows. Some have tiny brows. Just a funny thing on the property. Either these deer have all the brow tines or no brow tines.
Okay.
But this one was one of the ones that had a lot of brow.
Wow, man. He's gorgeous.
That's awesome. He is gorgeous.
It was a cool story, man. And I got this is actually I went back through pictures. I didn't know that I knew him last year when he showed up. I thought he was new last year, but I have pictures of him from the year before too, as a 2-year-old. So I've got him at 2 years old pictures, 3-year-old. I hunted him and have pictures, and then 4-year-old. I have pictures, and I was able to kill him. But
wow.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah. There's more out there too. That's the cool part is, this, it does take a village, right? I mean, all my neighbors around me, it takes a lot of guys to there are a lot of people, property owners they don't have to have the same goals, but they got to have like a common end game. And it just needs to be mature deer, right? That's what it turns into. If I kill that big 6-point I'm telling you about, he's not going to score anything, right? He's a 6-point, but he's mature deer, right? And that's that level.
That's the best score out there, right?
Bingo,
there. Mature.
Right? Bingo.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Quick question for the listeners who aren't watching this on YouTube. What do you think that deer will score? And I'm not a score guy. I can care less. But if you had
anybody
idea, I'm gonna say he's high 30s, 140.
So anybody does see this, take a look. And I score him.
I don't know what he is. Okay.
I scored him multiple times. It's not official. I didn't get him officially scored. So to me, I had guessed he was going to be about 130, 135. And same with my buddies. We've all seen pictures of him. But when you look at this frame, you don't consider the stuff at the base, right? So you're thinking main frame 10. And he actually scores main frame 10 with no trash. He actually scores 133.
Wow.
Nice.
With the trash at the bottom, he's 140.
Hell yeah.
I'm using round numbers right now. But he actually he's 140 and 0 8s, truly, on my score. First time I scored him, I thought he was 144, 7 8s, but I knew that I was also shaking and super excited. I calmed down, let a few weeks go by. I actually took him to the taxidermist and dropped him off. And then I'm like, hey, can I have the cap back? So a few weeks later, I went and got the cap. And so then I rescored him and I took my time. I drew, not a score guy. I've never really killed anything too scoreable. But I drew the line. I wanted to see what truly is it, and I got 140 and 0 8s.
Beautiful Michigan deer, buddy. Beautiful deer anywhere, but especially in Michigan.
But he's so asymmetrical. He looks fairly symmetrical, but the differences were so extreme, to be honest with you, on the score sheet that I don't even think he's Pope and Young in the gross. I don't think he is. There's so many deductions with this deer.
Okay.
Oh, we don't care about
It's not about it though, right? He was a 4-year-old deer, and that was the goal, right? That's where I wanted to get to. And he's not the only 4-year-old deer, and that's the best part. So there's more out there, and the guys are shooting higher quality deer around us, the guys and gals, and it's cool to see in that group chat. So
I need your neighbors, Nick.
Yeah.
Me too.
Hey, maybe you can be one of them. Just look for property for sale.
There we go. Absolutely.
Yeah. It helps. I have like one of my specific neighbors. He owns an L shape around me. He secures me on 2 sides. He's got the same goals as me. That's basically, awesome. And it limits how many hunters per acre there are, right? Or per section. And there are a couple of small sections that are 10 and 15 acres, but there's also a lot of 70, 100, 140, 200 acre group like sections, right? So it limits how many hunters per section there really are. And I think that also is a huge factor from the pressure. These deer aren't really getting pushed away and pushed out too much. I think that's huge in the long run.
Oh man, it's probably the biggest. I was talking with a guy in Kansas this morning about the same deal. Just it doesn't. It's just crazy how much neighbors can affect your ground. So
Absolutely, yep. And having good neighbors. I mean, I'm reaping the rewards of it. I think all my neighbors are as well. It's just the deer quality has just skyrocketed the last few years.
Man, if I could get those neighbors, we'd be killing giants up here. But I don't have those neighbors. So,
but what you got to do is not leave your sight dial at 35 yards. You got to last year. I put a video out last year. Well, it actually went live this year on Kevin's YouTube channel. I wounded a big buck. I call it a giant, of course. This is what we do. Everything's giant here if it's big.
No, it's Michigan. Yeah, absolutely.
I wounded what would have been my biggest buck last year. I shot at 40 yards. And I just rattled. He just finished a fight. I've never seen bucks fight before, truly, until last year. And I've saw 2 fights last year and 3 this year. These bucks are like crazy aggressive now on our property as we're getting more older bucks. So last year there was this fight in the hardwoods, and I rattled right in between when I was hearing them fighting and taking breaks. So I rattled, and he came bolting at me and tried to find me. And he actually tried to get a drink from a spring, and that's when I decided to shoot. And man, dude, he was so amped up. He ducked the string. I measured it out on video. I put a point where the arrow hits before the arrow goes. He dropped like 20, 24 inches.
Oh,
wow. And the way that I aimed at that buck last year was if he doesn't move, I miss low. I aimed off the deer, and that's consciously really hard to do. To actually put the pin that you mean to matter under a deer was super hard. I kept wanting to put it back on him. So I aimed low on purpose, and he still ducked so far that I backstrapped him. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good video too. I urge everybody
very good.
to check out Nick's videos. They're exciting, and you do a good job, buddy.
I get excited, I think, on video.
That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it fun right there.
I had a guy message me today. He's like, man, these videos are really fun and cool. I'm like, we're not the best at videotaping, but man, is it real. It's as close to real, I think, as it gets for a lot of guys, because we're just working class guys who are out there hunting too, right? And my emotions just get a little crazy when I deer hunt. So I'm not afraid, I guess, to post it. But.
Love it.
Well, Nick, are you ready for the rapid fire question segment brought to you by Everland Outdoors?
Oh boy. No, I'm not, but let's go.
All right. How we wrap this up usually, I'll hit you with number 1, your favorite beverage.
Oh, all day IPA.
Nice.
Yep, Founders Brewery.
I imagine number 2 here, you'll give a pretty good answer. What's your favorite venison recipe?
So I'm late to the game, but I got a smoker, finally, a pellet smoker. Kevin gives me shit because it's not a working man smoker, right?
I have a pellet smoker too. It's fine.
He's out there with the green egg, working it hard. I do the set it and forget it now.
Yeah,
and I think I'm this master smoker now. But no, truly, smoked tenderloin, or I'm sorry, not tenderloin, backstrap. I keep my backstrap in pretty large sections, and I don't even take the silver skin off till I'm ready to use it, just so it doesn't dry out at all, or I avoid any if freezer burn happens, it's at least on the outside that I cut off. So it stays pretty juicy and just smoked backstrap. That's awesome. My number 1.
All right. What bow are you shooting?
This year I'm in a prime. It's the RVX 34.
Nice.
Yeah.
Food, water, or cover? What's most important on your ground? You can only pick one.
Cover. I haven't had food before. I have a ton of water, and I've only shot 1 deer over water. So cover.
I like it. If you could have any piece of equipment dropped off at your property for free, what would it be? Habitat equipment, obviously.
It doesn't matter how expensive it is.
No, let's do it.
A forestry mulcher. Take care of that. Take care of that north half of the property. I'm just dreading what's going to take to clean that up.
Yeah, I love it. And last but not least, your favorite tree. Could be one you hunt on, it could be one you see on the side of the road or your front yard. When you plant for deer, what do you got?
I would say it's tough right now. My heart is really into chestnuts. I planted a bunch of them for deer, but maple trees for the looks. So I've been planting a lot of maples at the house, trying to fill up an empty yard. So we're big into maples right now.
Yeah. Well, thanks very much, man, for coming on. We've been talking to you for a while to get this scheduled, and just really appreciate it. Appreciate you, your support for the podcast and Vitalize and all you do with the content. Got some great trail cam pictures from you this year, and I look forward to doing more with you, buddy. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. I appreciate it too. All my content's really going to the Deer Hunter podcast right now. I'm working with those guys pretty closely, which again put me in contact with you. I started using Vitalize Seed. I'm new with it, so you're going to see things change and get better over time. So my first attempt at Nitro Boost terribly failed, but lessons learned, right? So thank you guys for working with me. We're seeing the results are starting to come, even in first year, right? So I've got a property with potential. I've got plans we're developing, and I think that we'll see some good results from that.
Absolutely.
Awesome, buddy. Thanks again.
All right, take care.
All right. See you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to the Habitat Podcast. We really do appreciate you guys coming back every week to get this awesome Habitat content. And we would appreciate it if you went to iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to this podcast, and leave us a 5-star review. That helps us continue to grow and trend in the right direction, attract new listeners, and help us provide better content in the future. Guys, we have a website full of resources. We have a blog on the website. We have YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all linked up at habitatpodcast.com. Our land plan services, merchandise, decals, hats, t-shirts, and I give away a free 5-inch decal to anyone who leaves us a review on Apple iTunes. Really appreciate it. I want to thank our partners, Downburst Cedars, Vitalize Seed Company, Morse Nursery, Packer Max Cultipackers, Stealth Outdoors, First Light Latitude Outdoors, United Country Midwest Lifestyle Properties. Thanks again, guys. We'll be back next week with another great episode of the Habitat Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.